so on to the main part of the evening. So we've got a former World Pursuit and British Road Race champion. He was feared for his formidable aggression and awesome power. See, I'm reading this. He's still got it, apparently. This is what I've been told, yeah. So can you please welcome to the stage Colin Sturgess.
Hi, Colin. Thank you.
Okay, so if we have time at the end, then we're going to have an open mic session. But we've, sort of sorted out a few questions. So from now on, I'm just going to read some questions, and Colin's going to take the floor. So enough of my yakking. Okay, so let's kick off. It's awesome to have you with us. Tell us what you're up to at the moment.
Trying to avoid a 9 to 5 by doing a little bit of coaching. I do take guided tours out in Spain, and I'm just setting up a little business, very much akin to sort of what Andy's doing. Sorry, Andy, but what Andy Kipk is doing, but on a small scale, and looking forward to sort of next year into doing a bit more back into team management and director sportive work, running teams and doing the tactics for the races and stuff. I do a little bit of commentary for Eurosport here and there, predominantly on road racing, but now with the winter months coming over, there should be some track as well, so I'll get back into that. And I was racing this year. Unfortunately, earlier in the year, I contracted glandular fever, so that's sort of curtailed my racing year. So I've been trying to float it out with beer.
So when did you start to get better from that?
I got the okay to start riding again 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I'm just taking it.
Yeah, we saw that earlier. Okay. So, well, your power and aggression really did set you apart on the bike. So tell us where you draw that fire from.
I think quite honestly, I think it comes from when I was a youngster. It's just my parents sort of instilled into me, if you're going to do something, do it properly, really, get stuck into it and no half measures. And I think I took that going forward. I was a very good young rider, and I never had sort of the fear of racing against sort of elder riders or better riders per se. And I think that just made me a very tough competitor.
Cool. So how did you balance that raw power with this kind of technical side of riding?
Believe it or not, Andy and I were talking about this on the ride tonight, and one of the things you've got to do is, you've got to enjoy your bike riding and your bike racing. But the other thing is you've got to learn to play on the bike. You've got to learn skills, because you can have all the aggression, all the raw power in the world, but if you can't translate that and you can't transform that into a race situation, then you really are going to struggle out on the open road. Nowadays, with Zwift and other sort of online based racing or training, it's not as important. But if you want to progress in the professional ranks, you've got to be able to play on the bike, and by that I mean sort of rub shoulders, go into a corner, lean on somebody without falling off, or without the other person getting nervous, or you getting sort of moved off your line. So it's it's a very fine balance. And as I say, when I was a child, we didn't have the facility like Castle Coombe. We had a very small velodrome. It was outdoors, but we used to do these school evenings where you go and you do laps one way, then you turn and you do laps, and then mum and dad would put traffic cones down and you weave in and out, and you do it one hand and you change, and all these skill-based things, and that's where it came from, Grant.
Brilliant. So structured training features in many of your camps. How important is the structure for competitive amateur cycling?
Very. If you want to progress, then structure is paramount. Gone are the days of literally just riding your bike and not really having a goal or not really knowing what you're doing within a ride. By all means, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Nobody's saying contrary. But if you want to progress as a racing cyclist and you are goal oriented, then you need structure. And, that can come working off heart rate, that can come working off power and watts, or other methods, sort of perceived, perceived bloody sensations, basically. But as long as it's quantifiable, then you can step up. So structure is crucial.
Brilliant. So can you tell us about the pressure that elite cyclists have compared to, say, other sports? What would be the main differences, say, for a footballer or a tennis player? What's unique to cycling, pressure-wise?
I think at the very highest level, and this will sound quite harsh and a bit cutthroat, but it's financial. Right. If you have a look at Neymar or top footballers or Rafa Nadal, they are earning millions upon millions of dollars, whereas there are maybe a handful of cyclists earning that. So you really need to sort of pitch your level, and that doesn't necessarily mean that as soon as you turn World Tour that you're going to be a millionaire. So the pressures are you've got to balance life with training and your team expectations, your sponsor expectations, and these are as taxing on you at that level as they would be at the very highest level. So your Chris Froomes and your Geraint Thomases, your Peter Sagans, they still have the pressures that a first-year pro has, or we sitting here tonight have. Finding time, they will obviously, be full-time bike riders, but there's a lot of stuff around that. So, there's, as I say, there's sponsor obligations, there's travel, there's all of this involved. The top guys have agents, the top women have agents, but, the time is probably the thing that you've got to really structure and balance properly. There's a lot of stress about your diet. There's a lot of stress about your actual training. Do you work to zones? Do you work to sensations? Do you work both of them together? So it's a struggle to find the balance, I guess.
Okay. So obviously you've been a team manager, but going back to when you were a pro, how different is it when you were a pro compared to the pressures of the upcoming cyclists now?
Massive.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a young under 23 trying to turn World Tour nowadays. It's very cutthroat.
Right.
I mean, it was back in when I turned pro. It was 1989, and cycling was structured in such that you had distinct amateur and professional ranks, and for amateurs to turn professional, you did it on victories, you did it on wins. If you were fortunate enough to win a big race in front of the director sportif or the team manager of a pro team, that was a big tick, but it didn't mean that you were going to get an automatic signing, and only the top guys had agents back then. So it was very difficult for the amateurs to turn pro. So it was almost a case of you went to the Olympics, you did a good ride at the Olympics, that helped you into the top 10% of amateurs that might get a shout at a contract. Right. Same with the World Championships. Now you've got so many different avenues, so many different races that the young guys and girls can put themselves in front of team managers that they really have to be performing almost at 95 to 100% all year round.
So they can just slot in.
Yeah. Somebody picks up a phone and says, Andy Mummery, look, we've seen your results. We need you for X, Y, and Z race next week. We realise that you're still under 23, but we want to give you a contract, but we need you on form. Now, back in the day, you would try to peak for maybe 2 races a year, which would be the World Championships and, say, an Olympics or a Commonwealth Games. Nowadays, that's gone. You sort of hold that. You may not be at 100%, but you will bubble under at sort of 96 to 98%, and then just put a sharpener on for that 98 to 100%. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult nowadays to step up.
Okay, so I was thinking when you went to the Seoul Olympics,
I did.
and this was before British Cycling.
It was there, yeah. It was BCF, so British Cycling Federation.
But you told me that you had to rely on some family, backing. I can't imagine the pressures that you must have been under to go to the other side of the world with a different cuisine, let's say, different language, getting around on different kind of transport. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that work?
Yeah, it's completely different to what the guys and girls are, sort of used to now with BC, British Cycling, and obviously with the British Olympic Federation. Everything is done for you now. Back then, it was still very much amateur sport. Now it's open. You've got the elite category, which is amateur and professional. And yeah, it was a massive eye opener. Fortunately, I'd been there the year before, exactly 1 year and 1 day to the Olympics. They have a pre-Olympic meeting. So I knew the velodrome. I'd seen the village. We'd experienced the mass transport system over there. We knew that riding a bike in Seoul was fairly dodgy. So we'd already done recce's on little circuits that we could train on, or bike paths and things. But yeah, like you say, Grant, it's a massive eye opener. And I think a few of the other riders in the British team who didn't go there in 1987 struggled a bit, because you walk into the Olympic Village and you are just surrounded by all these greats. You sat having breakfast opposite Steffi Graf or Michael Jordan or somebody like that. And if you're not prepared for that sort of thing, it can be quite overwhelming. And like you say, the cuisine, it is amazing. In the dining hall in Seoul, you had about 8 different stations, and they are vast. There's like 8 little restaurants around this, and you could have Italian food, you could have European food, American food. There's a Chinese section, and blah blah blah. And the secret is, obviously, before competition, you can't just go into the kimchi or sort of, right, I've never had sushi before, but here we go. And then so you sort of stick quite blinkeredly to
what you know.
Yeah, rice and pastas and sort of breakfast cereals and muesli and salads. But then afterwards, it's brilliant because you can just trough everything.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So nowadays, they even take their own pillows with them, don't they?
Yeah.
So that's so interesting that back in the day, that you were basically unsupported to a certain degree.
Yeah. My as you probably know, nowadays Olympic athletes, get Olympic grants. You go through the British Cycling system, whereby you go on to the Olympic development, and then you go on to sort of the gold medal plan, etc., etc. There's various levels, and as you go up, obviously the funding and the financing goes up as well. But back in 1988, we literally got £500 per year. That was it. My parents were forward thinking enough to realise that sort of in 1987, we're going to need help here. So we managed to get Leicester City Council on board. They bought me disc wheels. They bought me the cutting edge CAMPAG equipment, and we had cutting edge materials, but we didn't have what the guys and girls have today. Sort of that 25 grand a year that you can take yourself off to Colorado. You can take yourself off to Mexico City for an altitude camp. We were still doing the training on the lanes and the velodromes in Leicester.
Wow.
Yeah, so really, as I said earlier, it's real amateur stuff when you compare it to what's happening today.
Yeah. Okay, talk to us about the mentality, like the grit involved in cycling. What sets a pro rider apart? Is there a mentality or belligerence that all pro riders share?
Yeah, there is, and that is, believe it or not, it's cliche, but it's just be tougher than the next person. You know, when I was managing bike teams, Metal Tech Kyoto and Madison Genesis, I used to tell the guys, you know, be respectfully ruthless. You know, like have respect for your competitor, but you're going to beat them. It's that cut dry. You must be ruthless, and as long as you do it respectfully, I don't want, you know, effing and blinding and punching people and knocking people off. But that other person, that other rider needs to know that you're there to win.
Right.
And I think for me, that's what I used to take into racing was like, yep, I'll give you all the respect in the world. However, I'm in this race to win it. Okay. Now, if you want to beat me, then you've got to come up with something very special. A very famous Irish cyclist, I'm sure most of you will have heard, Sean Kelly, said to me once, in any race, you can split it 5%, 5%, 90%. 5% will never win a bike race.
Right.
90% can on any given day win a bike race. 5% will always win a bike race. Right. And he said, if you can't be in that 5% that will win a bike race, make sure you're in the top 5% of the other 90%. There you go.
Yeah. Where was he from?
Hang on, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
And he said this to me in a race, and I'm thinking, how can you be talking like this? I am swinging, and you're just like calmly talking about. But yeah, it is. It's knowing yourself, and it's knowing that you've got to be hungry. You know, if you want to win, you've got to be hungry to win.
Okay, and how does that sort of translate to, that mentality? How does that translate to everyday life? I mean, because, back when you were racing, you didn't have a shrink probably or any help. How did you, that go from that mentality to going down the shops or, living your life and the troubles and the tribulations that everybody has doing that?
I must admit, I was very fortunate. I did sort of work with a sports psychologist,
right.
Because I realised that it's what other nations were doing and what other riders were doing, and I needed that edge. It's certainly nowhere near as cutting edge as sports psychology is today. You know, if you've ever read any of Steve Peters' books, it's phenomenally in depth. But back then, we worked with. I forget the gentleman's name now, but it was very basic. It was imagery, it was visualization, it was relaxation techniques. But if that only gave me 3% over the competitor, then I was happy. It's little things like that. The talk at Ineos and Sky and British Cycling for years now has been marginal gains, but it's nothing new because we used to try to do the same back 20, 30 years ago, and I'm sure 40, 50 years ago, years prior to me, the riders were doing the same. I can see a few faces in here that I know, raced back in the 80s, 70s, and 60s. There you go. Yes, and yeah, exactly. And to be cutting edge, it's contemporary, so you can only judge yourself by those years, and you did strive for the best. So yeah, I'm sort of digressing a bit here, but coming back into life, those skills you learn as a cyclist, as having been through the system, they can stand you in very good stead. But whether or not they're a transferable skill later in life, I'm still finding that out, as you'll allude to in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so at 19, you were at the 88 Olympics in Seoul, and you missed out 0.7 of a second for a medal.
Yep.
Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely fuming.
Okay.
No, it was a mixed emotion. We'd set ourselves realistic goals. The year before, as I say, we'd been there. I'd raced against the Russians and the East Germans and everybody, and I picked up the silver medal. But Olympic cycle, it always brings up. The Australians come up with the goods, and everybody just steps up. And they hadn't sent, none of the nations had sent their very best pursuiter that year. So second, I was happy with, but realised that it was going to be tough to medal the next year. Qualified, I think, second or third fastest at the Olympics, and then all the way through the rounds. Now, I should qualify that nowadays you can win the gold medal in the pursuit in 2 rounds. Back then, you had to ride 5 rounds to get to the final. So completely different, which is one of the reasons the times in pursuit are so very much faster now. You have a look at Ashton Lambie is riding 4.5 and 4.6. John Archibald 4.9. Dan Bigham 4.11 and things like that. But you can actually do that, with the aerodynamics and obviously with the gearing and everything, because you've got 2 maximal rides over a period of 6 hours, 8 hours. But with the Pursuit Series back then in '88, you had 5 rides over 3 days. And, that is not just, a case of, recover. You've got to warm up, warm down, eat, warm up, warm down, eat. All of this. So those pursuit rounds become more elongated. So a 4-minute effort is actually an hour, because you warm up for 35 to 45 minutes, you race, and then you warm down for 15 to 25 minutes. You do that 5 times, it really does take a toll, but it's more endurance-based than pursuiting today.
Right.
So, yeah, again, digressing slightly, but, the Olympics went to plan. We set this goal for top 4, and, we achieved it. The East German I ended up riding against was a renowned hard man. He won the Peace Race, which is one of the major tours that at the time was, sort of took in Poland and East Germany and Czechoslovakia. And it's an absolute horrendous race. It is like the amateur Tour de France. It's that hard. Excuse me. So we knew, he was always going to be there and thereabouts. And of course, latterly, it's come out about, East German state-sponsored doping, and, obviously with the Russians, that was going on as well.
You talk openly about being bipolar.
Yeah, I do.
And can you just explain a little bit about what being bipolar means and how it affects you as a professional, how it affects you as a professional?
Yeah. So bipolar is, for want of a better expression, manic depression. So you have the lowest of the lows, major depression, which can last from a couple of days to a couple of weeks to a couple of months. And you have very little sort of grey area. You're very up and down, obviously, and it is cyclic. And then you have your highs, and you are going through these phases of mania. And they can be the most creative. They can be the most advantageous sports-wise, because you feel invincible. So you want me to go out and do 6 hours in this rain tonight? No problem. That's fine. I'll go and do it. If that's what my training says, I'll go and do it.
Do you think it helped your career in that way?
I think it did, but I also know it hindered as well.
Okay.
Because of the troughs of depression, where you are literally bedbound for days on end. You just don't want to look at anything. You don't want to talk to people. You don't pick the phone up. You want nothing to do with life. And that's not just in a sporting context as well. Obviously, that's you know, in real life, if you will. But I noticed it, and again, in hindsight, I noticed more of the depressive phases when I first lived in Belgium as a young professional. I was only 20 when I was first year pro, which back then was one of the youngest pros in the world. I was living in a small apartment in Belgium. Luckily, I spoke the language, so it wasn't too much of a culture shock. But there's a good little story here. If you don't mind, it sort of all links in.
Yeah.
But I won my very first pro race, a national called Grand Prix de Haan, which is it's a horrendous 210, 220 kilometre race up in the coastal area near, well, basically De Panne. 3 days is De Panne area. It's predominantly flat. It is always windy. It rains. There's cobbles. There's tram tracks. It's a real hard man's race. Anyway, I won it, and I was obviously quite chuffed by this. And you know, these were the days where, you know, literally there were no team buses. You would get changed in a bar, or, you know, somebody's back room occasionally. And you would finish a race, and maybe the soigneur would have left you a towel, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe there'd be a bucket of soapy water, maybe there wouldn't. There would be no protein drinks or anything like that. If you were lucky, there was a can of Coke or something like that. So I finished this race thinking, oh, wow, you know, go up on the stage, handshake, get me a bunch of plastic flowers and the little envelope of cash. Thank you very much. Right, what now? Okay. Walk back to the car, pack my bike away, drive an hour home, get out. I live 6 stories up in the lift, right. Nobody to clean my bike, nobody to clean my kit, nobody to cook me dinner, nobody in the flat.
Wow.
Right. You know, it looks glamorous on TV. It really does, you know, boom. Oh God, I can't not clean the bike, and I can't not wash my kit because I'm racing again in the morning.
Wow.
So I've got to do that. Do I eat first? You know, and I know, I'll ring mum and dad, tell them that I've just won. Ring them. No, they've gone out for the night. Oh, damn it. All of this is playing on your mind, and it's not an easy lifestyle either. You know, you're constantly traveling and living out of suitcases. And coming back to that same empty flat. And that's when I started noticing, like, that one down day started to become 2, started to become 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think the worst it got was about 8 weeks out from the World Championships I won in 1989. I didn't want to train. I wasn't eating right. I'd start having beers in the day because I was just bored, and I just wanted to, you know, just get out of the situation I was in. When I did train, I'd literally just go and smash it for an hour as hard as I could. At least there was something there. But then the cyclic nature of bipolar is, I came home, I started training behind my dad's motorbike, I started seeing improvements in form, I started breaking sort of PBs and you know, sort of little KPIs along the way, and realising, actually, right, I am on the up, and that feeds the mania, that feeds that up. So yeah, it's a weird situation. It's the best and worst of worlds.
Okay, so we've got about 4 or 5 more questions to go before I'm going to put it out to the audience. So let's talk about you as trainer now. What are you like as a trainer, and what do you say to your riders to get them motivated?
I'm actually quite a big pussycat when it comes to my riders. I realise he's looking at me with disdain. I should explain. Back at 15, 20 years ago, something like that, I used to help train Andy Mummery, sitting there as a
in
national
the house.
captain. Woo. And I think it's an evolution. You know, you sort of gone are the days of just dictatorial sort of, right, you must do this, you must do that. That's what, like when you go to Belgium and sort of France, Italy, that's what the old trainers would do. You must do 6 hours today. Well, why? Just do it. There was no sort of, because, 6 hours at, nice gentle zone 2, it starts to build mitochondria and you'll just burn fats better and you'll just become more efficient. It's all about conditioning. No, it was just go and do it. So with my training now, I give as much information as I can to a rider. I view them in a holistic point of view. I don't just work by heart rate. I don't work just on watts. I work on everything. So I say to people, yep, let's get you on training peaks. Let's get you riding with heart rate. Let's get you a power meter. But what I want to hear from is you. I need your interpretation of that data, because some days you can sit doing 20-minute efforts at 400 watts and it feel like a piece of pie. And other days you'll get to 10 minutes at 380 and just want to call it. Right. Just say no. And you've got the same training, everything is equal. But what has happened? Oh, well, I didn't sleep well. I've got a bit of insomnia. Right, well, the data doesn't tell you that. The heart rate may slightly, but the data won't. So that's why I try to, sort of really bring the human aspect in as well.
Okay. Are you super competitive with the people that you train with still?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, the lads in Leicester, we train hard. We have this expression, let's go for a mince around. Let's mince in the lanes. That's fine. That's just an hour, 90 minutes pootling. That's fine. But when we train, we give it a nudge, and then when you train hard, you give it a snappy nudge. And it's not unknown for. There's a core group of about 5 or 6 of us will go out. There's myself. There's Gabs Calaig when he's down in Leicester. There's Rob Orr. There's Dan McClay when he's back, and we've got a really good little core. And it's not unknown to go out and do sort of 3.5, 4 hours at 36, 37k an hour, and really step into each other. Yeah. And I'm fortunate that I can still give as good as I get, even at 50. I've lost my top end power, right? But I've become a very efficient diesel.
Okay, cool. Have you ever met a rider, either as a trainer or back in the day when you were a pro, who you just instantly knew, oh, here we go, this guy's got it? Or girl?
Yeah, that's a good question, Grant. You can see people on a bike, how they sit, how they act, how they sort of almost deport themselves. But it takes watching them in a race and watching their craft and watching their skill to really know. I'm struggling to think of an example of a specific rider. The big thing with sort of coaching lads and lasses through is, the human aspect that I was saying that, is so important, can change just the rider's fortunes. So I won't say who, but a little while ago I was coaching a very, very talented young guy, and I thought, you know what, your numbers are great, you ride a bike really well, you're from a great background, your family life is superb, you've got good support, you're an intelligent kid, you've just finished your A-levels. I'd be certainly backing you for a pro contract in a year, maybe 2 years' time. Mm. He found a girlfriend. No, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But to the point that he's quit cycling. Wow. It's a lifestyle choice. Yeah. And I try to say to him, look, I'm not trying to dictate to you how to live your personal life, but you will be offered this at the age of 19, 20 perhaps. you will only have one offer to turn pro, because if you come back to it at 25, it's too late. You'll be a very, very good rider, but you won't have this contract again. And they said, no, that's fine. I'm at ease with that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well,
okay.
that's a very, very mature, for a 19, 20-year-old,
Yeah.
that's a very mature stance to take.
Yeah.
Connor Swift, I think, is going to do big things.
Right.
Connor impressed me no end when I worked with him at Madison. He's just got a professional head to him. He's not had it easy. He's done it tough. He's come up through some smaller teams, and he's taken a shelling, and even now, you see him in races, and he's still getting a kicking. But he's come from a small team like Sheffield CC, and he won a few little races there. He then got picked up by Madison, and then obviously when I had him, we won the nationals with him, and he won the points in Craig's Elites, and he was second overall there on the same time as Damien Toos, who turned pro for Cofidis shortly after. And then obviously, Connor's now moved on to Samsic. So I think he's going to do good
Great
things.
things. Yeah.
But some of the, and I think some of the most exciting talent comes out of Australia. I'm obviously a little bit biased because I've been through the system there and I've lived there and whatever. But yeah, you would not believe the strength and depth of the Australian. It's just phenomenal. They've got their team pursuit team, for example, at the moment, they've got 8 riders, and they have to whittle that down to 6 for the Olympics.
Right.
They can do drop-ins where you can, do all sorts of formulation with those 8 riders, and they are within split seconds of each other. So Simon Jones at Australian Cycling has his work cut out. That's going to be a nightmare. So yeah, it's difficult to pinpoint one rider per se.
Okay. So coming back to you, you once said that winning the British National Road Championships in 1990 was your proudest moment alongside the World Pursuit Championship the previous year. What was it about these 2 victories that stand above the others?
Obviously, the world is the world's. It's the pinnacle of pursuiting. It's the pinnacle of road racing. It's the pinnacle of whatever sphere of the sport. To wear that rainbow jersey, and I'll show you it in a moment with the medal. You keep that for life. You wear it on your jersey. You are entitled to have the bands on the collar and cuff for life, and that's pretty special. There's only ever 10 world champions per year, and that was across road and track, cyclocross. So to be a world champion, it's incredibly special, and the manner in which I won it, I feel, and this is quite difficult for me to talk about because I am quite a humble person and I don't like aggrandizing. But if you ever take 5 minutes of your time to watch that 1989 Pursuit final, the manner in which it's won, you will not see again. Hugh Porter and other commentators had written me off with a kilometre to go. Dean Woods was 2.5 seconds ahead, and I literally turned that around to a 2-second victory. And this comes back to the point you made earlier about grit, determination, and that attitude of like, hang on, it ain't over till the fat lady sings, guys. And that's what I brought to that Pursuit final. It surprised a lot of people, but the nice thing was when I got back to Belgium, it was instant respect. I'd gone from, there's a handy English kid that's won a couple of Pro Kermesses. Yeah, he's all right. To, the absolute champions of the time coming up and going, Proficiate, hey, fantastic rider, hey, such a performance I never see before. Respect, and that was really nice, particularly for quite an impressionable kid that, you know, was sharing a room with people like Greg LeMond and Eddie Plancart and looking up to them, and all of a sudden they're saying to you, wow, man, you know, that's so special. The road race championship, again, you know, it was a day like this. It was blowy and rainy and pretty miserable. But most of my racing in Belgium and France and Holland was done in this anyway. So it played into my hands. And being a rider on a foreign team, you were often, sometimes quite rightly, ganged up on by the domestic professionals because they wanted to keep the jersey and the championships in the UK. So it was really nice to get out there and basically take the race by the scruff of the neck and sort of, you know, come across the line with, you know, with the two hands in the air and take that jersey back to Belgium. And literally 2 days later, I got back to Belgium, and my DS had jerseys printed up and everything. I walked into my room, and it was brilliant. There was a kit bag on the end of the bed, and I sort of unzipped it, like that, and there were gilets and long sleeve jerseys, short sleeve jerseys, even a skin suit. It was just like, oh wow! And this was the back in 1990, where, you know, you used to have to give a skin suit back to the BCF, the British Cycling Federation, after a World Championships. You didn't get to keep your kit. So to be given, you know, like pros were given a lot of kit anyway, but to be given, you know, something like that was super special.
Brilliant. So what motivates you now to get on your bike?
I love the sport. For a long time, I quit in 2000. I quit the national squad in 2000. I made the Olympic selection for Sydney, and I had a massive falling out with BC, and I walked off the squad. And for almost 12 years, I had very, very little to do with the sport. I bought a vineyard in Australia, and I became a winemaker and wine educator, sommelier. Completely got out of cycling, and to the point of not even watching the tour or, you know, whatever. I was really bitter, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And slowly but surely, I started to, you know, oh, okay, Gent Wevelgem's on, righto. So I'd sit up and I'd watch it. I know this road, and sure enough, boom, you go up the Camelberg and things like this. And I started to sort of just get that little feeling back to the sport, that love again. And funny enough, there's in the vineyard area where I used to live, there's a pub called, well, it's now called the Hunter Resort, but it's the old name was the Talawanta, and all the winemakers on a Friday night meet in there and drink the place dry, basically. So I was well up for that. But they never knew I was a cyclist until during the tour, Paul Sherwin mentioned my name on the commentary, and somebody turned to me and went, "It's got your name. It's about the same age as you. You weren't a cyclist, were you?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I was rookie, actually, yeah."
Yeah.
And then it came out, and they were like, "Why didn't you say anything? Why?"
Yeah.
So I explained about, you know, the bitterness and things like that, and they were disgusted. And I'm like, "Mate, and don't forget, Australia is such a massive sporting culture."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Mate, come on, you know, you've got to get. Surely you've got a bike still." "Well, I do." Well, go on, finish half an hour early, go out training. I'm not training. But I started riding again. And the long story is, I went through a very messy breakup in Australia, and unfortunately I was homeless for a while. And I moved back to the UK in 2012, basically to rebuild my life. And the bike is what has helped me rebuild my life. It's got me back on the even keel. You know, I've had my mental health struggles, and, you know, I'm finding the even keel even today. You know, it's a terrible cliche, but, you know, life is a journey, and I'm still on it, and I'm still trying to find myself, and I have those ups and downs still. But the one constant now that I know helps and gives me focus is the bike.
Brilliant.
And it may not be racing. I really enjoy racing.
Yeah.
But if I can't, due to feeling depressed, or like this year I've had glandular fever, then it doesn't matter as long as I ride.
Yeah.
You know, it's the health aspect, keeping the beer belly down. That's it. But the most important thing is I just love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's sitting here speaking to everybody here. You know, it's really, I'm really honoured to be here. You know, I don't get to do this all that very often. I really do enjoy it. Brilliant. And I hope you do too, you know.
Yeah, well, you've been fantastic so far. So I was thinking I'll just flip this a little bit because there's some other famous cyclists in the room, aren't there? I was just wondering, have you got any questions for them?
Yeah, all right.
I'm going to go and get a mic. Can I get a microphone? And whilst that's happening, I just want to say, because if you're going to put photos up, which you should, can you tag us on @Wiggle on Facebook and @Wiggle_sport on Instagram and Twitter. That would be very nice of you. Oh, we've got a mic, have we? Oh, look, we've got Sam. I'll do this. Okay. So, yeah. Have you got...
Well, let's go with Andy.
Where am I going? Oh, I've got to turn it on first.
To your left.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on. Where am I going?
So, that one there, the rotund thing in black.
There you go. Just speak right into it when he, yeah.
Andy, question for you. All right, and excuse the expression, I'm not in your pocket, but you were a very, very talented bike rider in the day. For those of you that don't know, Andy held the 5 kilometre junior world record for a while. I think you probably still do. He's ridden junior worlds. What stopped that progression?
I guess I loved racing, and I loved doing well at racing. And I had a couple of seasons where illness got in the way, and I couldn't win. And I think I got to the point by that stage that I'd stopped enjoying riding a bike. It was all about the racing and the winning. And if I couldn't win, I didn't want to play.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Winning is, it's almost addictive, isn't it? It's something we, you know, as a racing cyclist, I'm not just talking, you know, as cyclists per se, but as a racing cyclist, you enter races, yeah, to enjoy them, but ultimately to win. And if that is taken away, and it does become hard, you know, you go back to that Sean Kelly anecdote about being in the 5% that will always win a bike race. You know, once you slide into that 90% and you start sliding down that 90% into the lower quadrant of that 90%, you know, you may only have one win a year. And, you know, that gets hard to take. I'll put it in context. My last year amateur, I think I won, it was close to 50 bike races. That's a lot, you know. And then I turned professional. My first year, I won 3, which for a neo-pro was still good, but it's, you know, it's staggering to sort of realise the step up to that level. And once you have those wins and that sort of elation taken away, yeah, I can see it.
Brilliant. So, has anyone got any questions that they would like to ask?
Could I just add something to that, Colin?
Yeah, hold on. Let me get the microphone to you. What's your say your name as well?
Yeah,
please.
I'm Joe Mummery, Andrew's father. Later the VC St Raphael, Polytechnic, Barnet, and about 30 other clubs. The thing that struck me, Colin, when we first met and I sort of handed Andrew over to you as a coach, was just how good you were at motivating him. You were 1 mile an hour faster, or he was, straight away, just through your motivation. And that's a tremendous asset and skill that I'm sure you've taken forward into the other coaching and management posts you've held. Absolutely tremendous ability that you've got. And in our family, you know, we speak of you in hallowed terms.
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Brilliant. Anybody else got a question? Or shall we do
I might shoot, actually.
Yeah, okay. Last word, always.
Always. It was a great pleasure to ride my bicycle around the circuit with you this evening.
Thank you.
And also, you came to our club dinner a few years ago, and it was right up there. It was brilliant. But I have a question, because over the last few weeks, me and a few of the other guys here, we've ridden from Land's End to John O'Groats a few times, and one of the questions that actually a few times, but one of the questions that we quite often get asked by just your average people who are riding multi-day eventing, so basically we're doing a century day after day after day for 9 days. Not many people at our level get to train to do that, really, even if you do a lot of bike riding, doing that kind of endurance riding. So I just wondered if you got any tips, certainly on recovery, because it's the biggest thing for your average Joe who isn't a super athlete. You know, you might be on your bike for 9 hours or more for a day, and then you go, you know, and then you got to get up and do it the next day. So, you know, as a coach and as an ex-pro, what kind of things did you do to help you recover as quickly as possible?
You know, in an ideal situation, you start to think not just of the ride you're doing, but obviously the next day and the day after that. You know, if you put it in Le Jog, how many days did it take you? How many days?
9 days.
Okay, 9 days. So you look at it as, you know, a 9-day tour, you know, a short Tour de France, if you will. And you're never thinking just about the day you're on. You're always considering what's coming. And that means during the ride, you know, fueling up, constantly eating and drinking. I'm not talking about, you know, slamming back Cokes and things like that, because you're just going to hit sugar highs and, you know, drop you down. But, you know, sensible, you know, look at some of the products Wiggle sell and some of the products that actually Wiggle do. Your little gels are fantastic. They're not big, sort of, they're just enough just to down. Just constantly just nibbling away so that you're fueling the system. One of the things I get my riders to do is not every day, but probably every second day, is hit the foam roller and do a little bit of stretching, dynamic stretching. Sleep, cannot get enough sleep. Obviously, when you're doing 9 hours a day on Land's End, John O'Groats, it's very, very difficult to do that. But, you know, it's crucial. So, you know, if you've got soigneurs, if you've got mechanics, then you give the bike to the mechanic. That's it. It's out of yours. You don't need to walk down to the garage to make sure that everything's done, because you trust that mechanic. It will be ready for you in the morning. Same with your soigneur. Get a massage if you can. You know, as much relaxation time as possible. Sit down. You know, I can't remember. Andy will probably be able to tell me here. It was someone like Jacques Anquetil or Fausto Coppi back in the day said, never stand if you can sit. Never sit if you can lay. And, you know, the practicalities of that are ridiculous, obviously. But there's a lot in it. Even now on the British team, you know, that's a mantra. You have a look at them in the sort of semicircle in the centre of the velodrome, and very, very few of them are actually stood up or anything like that. They're either in a chair or on a yoga mat and a towel, having a little stretch or a sit down or a lay down. So it's all about preservation of energy. So don't deplete it in the first place. Lots of fueling, lots of nutrition, good food. Stay away from your Coca-Colas. Use that as a treat. You know, get some good fuel into you. Healthy eating, and then plenty of sleep, good sleep. You know, sort of going to bed 10 o'clock, waking up at 6. I don't know what the hours were, but you know, try to get your 7-8 hours in. I know it's not always possible. You know.
10.
Right. Okay. What I've just said is complete. No, but it's, you know, just looking at it in that tour context, you know, just try to get as much downtime as possible.
What we're saying is basically Andy needs to provide us with our own swan.
Oh, here we go.
That's it.
Here we go.
Team bus for us next
Yeah.
year.
I believe Ineos are selling theirs, or one of theirs.
Individual must be.
Brilliant. yeah, but you know, it's all about preservation of energy.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think we're going to kind of call it a day there. We can stop filming in a minute, but first we want a big round of applause for Colin. So we're going to hang around for half an hour or so, and Colin is more than happy for you to have some photographs taken with his stuff and to have a chat. So yeah, once again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Grant. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.